Hello, all, and welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Coolbaugh. Today, I have me a very special guest, Keith McArdle. Keith, how are you doing today?
Very well, thanks, mate. How are you?
Pretty good. I'm surprised I got that out today. My wife's like, "You're losing your voice. This is not my normal voice." I know, I'm sure the viewers know. I've been yelling at children all week for coaching. So.
Oh, right. So it's not like a touch of COVID or something.
No. Oh, thank goodness. Yeah, no. She was like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Oh my gosh, they like had the music going today. We had two teams in there." I'm like, it just gets so loud. My girls can't hear, so I have to talk louder. And as soon as the first day of school starts, that's why I try to get you this week. As soon as the first day of school starts, school and sports, I lose my voice the first
week. You got no voice at all.
Yeah. So last year they're like, "Do you have COVID?" I'm like, "No." I'm like, I literally just lose it every fall. I try to tell the kids, the voice is like a muscle, but they don't believe me. Well, Keith, I'm so glad that, we could reschedule. People online obviously know, I'm having a baby. So this is between that and, being a teacher, it's just been nuts. So I'm so happy we could get you on today. I've been wanting to talk to you for quite a while. Like I told you before we started, I had, one of your readers, actually message me on Facebook and say, "Hey, you need to interview this author." So I was really happy to check out your books online. And I know I grabbed a couple on Kindle. Like I said, there's a couple that I like really need in paperback. So I'm really excited to go and get those ordered tomorrow for my birthday. So it'll be a
Thanks,
nice
Daniel.
little.
I hope you enjoy them when you get around to them.
Yeah. I'm really excited. But I'm so glad. I love people when they give me recommendations for authors. Usually I'm fishing myself. And I'm, pulling people in on social media. So anytime that somebody can message me. So I just want to point out, if anybody who's listening to this or watching the video, if you have an author that you think I should be reading, in particular, or interviewing, just let me know, and I'll approach them and we'll try and get them on. That way, we can get a nice little session going and see what their writing style and stuff like that's about. So,
hey man, I just wanted to say congrats on your baby as well.
Oh, thank you so much.
It's going to change your life for the better. Yeah. It's awesome. Like the first 6 weeks are challenging.
Yeah.
But it's such an amazing journey, man.
No, I appreciate it, Keith. I really do. It's funny because my buddy just had his child, and he's an author, and I was like, "Hey, how's it going?" He goes, "I got like a whole book written." His child and his wife just slept the whole time. I said, "I don't think I'm that lucky," but yeah, I was laughing. I was like, "That's rare." I feel like, because nobody else I know could say that within the first 6 weeks. But yeah, I'm excited though. Yeah, I got 3 nephews, so I think it'll be really fun. My other my other 2 nephews are younger. So everybody, other than my older nephew, will be within like a year and a half of each other. So I feel like it'll be pretty cool for them to come here in the summer and hang out, go to the park, go swimming. We live like where there's a lot of lakes and stuff here in New York, so there's a lot to do and stuff. So yeah, I feel like it'll be a good time. I'm a teacher, so I've literally worked in public education since I was 19. So, this year will be my 15th year, or sorry, 16th year. Yeah, in public education. So taking care of everybody else's kids. So it'll be interesting to finally, take care of my own. So yeah. So I feel like I've enjoyed it a lot with everybody else's. So I feel like I'll, enjoy it that much more. Yeah. So yeah. I really appreciate that, Keith. We'll start right in with that first question there, which I'm really interested in. What has your writing journey been like up until this point?
Up until this point, it's been pretty consistent.
Right now.
I've usually tried to write something each of my days off. So I work 4 on, 4 off, and my 4 days off, I'll usually try and get 500 words to 1,000 words out each day. Like some days I don't feel like it, but sometimes you just have to push yourself, I guess. Up until recently, anyway, my partner gave birth December last year to our baby.
Oh, congrats! Yeah, that's awesome.
And my writing has taken a bit of a backseat.
Yeah,
because of that, and rightly so. I've been on long service leave. Deb's gone back to work, so I've been on long service leave the last 3 months, looking after our lad. And it's been absolutely fantastic. And it's not lost on me that this time is like really important, and it's a time that I'll never get back. When he gets older.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I don't regret it at all. It's been absolutely fantastic. I love being with him. It's good. But later in the year, I'll crack back on with it, get back into the writing again. Yeah.
I feel like that's fair, because it's, especially when they go, like start hanging out with friends and stuff more, it's like you'll have plenty of time to write then, that's what I was trying to tell my brother with my nephews. I was like, don't worry about X, Y, and Z. He's always worried about, advancing at work and, and stuff like that. When, he was younger, and I'm like, no, I was like, you can do that later, it's like, it's important. But I was like, I feel like, enjoying these moments is,
Yeah,
more
it's
important.
it's so important, man.
Yeah.
Because like it's just he and I for those 3 months during the day.
Oh, anyway. That's cool. That's
and
cool.
Then, yeah, so when he starts daycare and stuff, it's that those days are gone. So
yeah,
I need to enjoy it now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I definitely understand that. That's why I was like, yeah. Yep, I'm jealous. I always tell my wife, I was like, I'm hoping, obviously, when I get stuff out there that everybody just likes it and I can just be Brandon Sanderson and stay home, and I always tease her. I was like, I tease her all the time. I'm like, I want to be a stay-at-home dad and just write, be full-time author, and just, take the kids to the park, come back, have somebody watch them for a couple hours, bust out 5,000 words, and then, go do whatever when she gets out of work. I just, I think that's just like the life I want. I love teaching, like, don't get me wrong, but like our baby's not even out yet. And I can just tell, like priorities have changed, I'm just like, and I can only imagine, when, he's actually here. So I'm very jealous of you for that. That sounds amazing. So,
it's been
awesome. Man. I've been trying to get my wife to work next summer so that I can take time off with the baby, but I don't think it's going to work that way. I think I'll be the one that, is going off after once, the 6 months is done, and then we'll have summer school start up. So one of my students actually at summer school, I was teasing him about it. He goes, yeah, we'll see you next summer, buddy. I was like, yeah,
smart off.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, probably true, but yeah, it's really funny. Well, that's awesome. That sounds like you got a good plan there. I think it's always great personally, when people take a break, especially for, important moments, because I think if you don't, like, you're really missing out on
you miss those moments.
Yeah.
And I think not only do you miss out on those moments, you never get them back. So
yeah.
Yeah.
I totally agree there. I think you're on the right track with that, my friend, for sure. So what genres do you currently write in, and how did you choose these?
Okay, so I write in a few different genres.
Yep.
I write mainly in contemporary thriller or military action. I've got a couple of books out. I've got a trilogy, which is about the Indonesian invasion of Australia, which is military action. And there's a thriller as well, which is Tilda Midgard, which is about an Australian Special Air Service patrol in Iraq. Beginning of the second Iraq War, second Gulf War. And they accidentally trigger a time portal and end up in 10th century Viking Denmark. And they learn to fight with swords and shields, and they run out of ammunition. And they're just trying to find their way back home again, back to their families. And that's it's the military thriller in action as well. And then I tried my hand at fantasy as well, which I really actually enjoyed. I do prefer the contemporary thriller writing, but the fantasy was pretty cool just to try my hand at it. And I did enjoy that. And I guess I choose stories set in worlds that I'd like to read about in a way that I'd like to read. And there's nothing really fancy or mystical about how I choose them. I just sit down and think about it and go, oh, that'd be cool. Let's give that a crack.
That's fair. Well, I feel like you always have to, write what you love to read, and that's why I feel like lately it's been hard for me for my fantasy novel, because it's like I've been reading more urban fantasy, and I feel like I kind of got burnt out on, just for like 17 years straight, and then
yeah.
It was just, I read so many.
It's nice to have a change sometimes, eh?
Yeah,
it's like just refreshing.
Yeah.
Not against that genre at all. But,
no. Well, I'm trying to bring up a really good point too. I think it's also interesting to write in multiple genres too, particularly for indie, and they always say
for the same reason too.
Yeah. I feel like we never talk about that on here, but yeah, I think I just did so much writing. It took me 14 years to finish this one book in my own fantasy world. And, and then I was like trying to fix draft two. Well, it just wasn't ready yet. So I felt like, things needed to marinate. And I was like, tried again. And I was like, yeah, I just can't, I was like, for whatever reason. So when I started to do the historical urban fantasy with the Romans versus zombies, I was like, oh, this is so much fun.
I can't wait for that, man.
That's so good. My buddy, he's like, you have to finish these other ones before going. And I was like, no, I get it,
No, you need to finish the zombie and Romans, mate.
Yeah. You and Jeffrey A. Caskell said the same thing. He was like, stop doing urban fantasy and just do that instead.
Oh man, that's cool.
Yeah, it's gonna be it's so interesting because there were so many things. Well, there's so many things with my novellas that came out where that was another thing. As I then was like, oh, like I was doing fantasy, and then I was like, oh, all of a sudden, all the world building. I was like driving. I had a really long drive with my wife, and she's pregnant, so she was sleeping, and but we weren't, stopping and stuff for food or whatever, and she was just sleeping for like 8 hours, which was fine. But like I was driving, and all of a sudden, all the the things started to click, and I don't know why. All of a sudden, I was listening. Oh, I think that's because I listened to Patricia Briggs with Mercy Thompson series, and all of a sudden she said something, and something just clicked, and all of a sudden all the world building just came into focus, and I was like, okay, I have to stop everything I'm doing and fix this one story and then go from there. And then it just kept going, and now I just have like some of the craziest ideas I've ever had for urban fantasy.
Cool,
but it was cool because I guess I'll leave the cat out of the bag a little bit. But so in my historical urban fantasy, speaking of like time travel stuff, like the main Roman centurion I have is going to be the ancestor of my recon marine, who becomes a monster. Cool. Yeah, so he's a monster hunter in ancient times, but like him and his crew will be, and then that guy. So I'm actually combining them there, and not saying at one point maybe they don't meet because of something, but yeah. So I like things that are connected like that. So yeah. So
David Gemmell did that a lot.
Yeah.
All of his books all of his books are connected. Yeah. In some way.
Yep. Yeah. Well, Sean Crow and I talk about that a lot. He's gonna kill me if he sees this because I put down a couple of David Gemmell books because I wanted to just take time instead of hopping all over. I wanted to just read, the several that I had. So I'm saving those for this fall. Those are going to be my like guilty
pleasure. I'm jealous, mate. I'm jealous that you have David Gemmell books that you haven't read before. Yeah, you'll love it. And, I had David Gemmell books left to read that I've never read.
Yeah, I have, I think, 7 ready to go. And I've been waiting for an author to get me interested again, in something so much. Because like Mercy Thompson, I went through Patricia Briggs within, like 6 months. 6 weeks, like everything. And then I had to wait 6 months for the next book to come out. And then my friend was like, oh, she has Alpha and Omega. But yeah, I like how she does the same thing where, like the 2 series are connected. So yeah. But Sean Crow and I talked about that a lot, and Mark Timoney too.
I know Sean's a massive Gemmell. I've got to read some of his books actually because they actually sound quite Gemmell-esque.
Yeah,
be cool. So.
Yep. His Godless Lands book too just came out. I grabbed that one recently. I just absolutely fell in love with the cover, like the character, the mood. But yeah, he was like, you love everything about all these different people. He's like, that's David Gemmell in a nutshell. But I didn't want to do him cheap, and I felt like lately I've been so busy. I don't want to like start and then have to stop. Like I want to just be, so I know as soon as I'm done with my current, mini job going into like, it's like mid-October we get done. And that's like always my cozy time to read where I'm just relaxing and kind of coasting before the baby comes. So I was like, I'm just going to fly through David Gemmell. But
take the time to relax, mate.
Yeah, exactly.
First 6 weeks are just,
I'm going to need it. So, yep. Well, I loved a lot of the, the covers in particular, where I was like, oh, these are just gorgeous, and then I picked them up all the time. And I was like, I've never read this guy. And then I think I picked him up right before Sean and I had our first interview last August. He was like I think it was like my 7th or 8th interview. So it was pretty cool that I picked him up like literally like the week before. And then he had a lot of good things to say. So I actually started Legend a while back, but I knew I had to put it down because I knew I was just gonna fly through them, and it was again like
you know the story
time.
behind Legend. You know the story, how he wrote it, why he wrote it.
I do not actually. I would love to hear it.
So David Gemmell was in hospital with cancer, and he survived. He survived, but at the time he was quite sick, and he just felt like the cancer was assaulting his body, and his body was the fortress. So
that's interesting.
The nadir, that's how I pronounce it. When they're assaulting Dross Delnoch, the nadir is the cancer, and Dross Delnoch is his body.
Oh, that's interesting.
And that's how he came up with the idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. Oh, I like stuff like that. That's like really cool, like behind the scenes. Well, that's like
such a good writer.
That's like like the movie The Princess Bride, where the actor who plays Miguel Montoya, where he's like, his father was died of cancer, and they're like, it's like, how should I, approach the the six-fingered man or whatever, and he just decided to treat him like the cancer that took his father, and that's one of my favorite scenes of any movie, and I feel like it was just so real. So I can only imagine how he wrote that, but no, that's really cool. I'm really glad that I actually saved that for you to tell me that, because now I feel like I'll get a much better reading and writing experience out of that. But yeah, that's super cool.
He'll be missed. He was my favorite author as well. Yeah,
so many people. Anthony Ryan says that a lot. So yeah. So I said to my buddy, he said the other day, he goes, I'm so jealous of you. He's like, because you're gonna get a new favorite author, and I haven't had one like really get me since Patricia Briggs, and before that it was like Kevin Hearn with Iron Druid Chronicles. Kelly McCullough is another one, the Fallen Blade series. I absolutely fell in love with his character and his world. But
there's one book of Gemmell I have never read, and it was written under a pseudonym called Ross Harding.
Oh, okay.
And it's a book called Black Knight, White Swan, or White Swan, Black Knight, or something like that. And I deliberately haven't read it because I want to read it, but I don't want to read it because it's the last book I'll ever read of David Gemmell.
Yep.
So yeah, it's weird, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I totally understand that. There are 3 different authors that I have like that, where I'm like, oh, like if I it's like Castle, the TV show I love with Nathan Fillion. I got to the last episode. My buddy was just teasing me about it today. I got 35 minutes left out of a 50-minute episode. I'm like, well, once I watch it, it's done. And the show in particular really helped inspire me to write, and really made me want to be an author again at a time where I was so disenfranchised by the writing process. So, to be done with what now, it's gonna be my second book, to be done with a TV series that got me into wanting to do all this again. Like, it just seems like I just need to leave it unfinished, and I don't think I'm prepared for my life to be done, with that part yet, and so I definitely understand that. Yeah. It's really hard too when you love like R.A. Salvatore is one of those people for me, and like Elaine Cunningham, Ed Greenwood. I saved a lot of their books for a long time to stockpile so I can avoid that. There are several Robert E. Howard books that I have not finished, and I probably never will. I'll probably do the same thing, whittle down one. Yeah, he inspired me to write so much in college. I mean,
so did Gemmell and Stan Nichols. Both of those guys, and Stan's still alive. Just cool. I'll read that book eventually, but just not yet.
Oh man, I'm getting all emotional like thinking about it now. But when you have something that I agree with you. You have something that's inspired you that much, and that you love that much. It's hard for that. It's hard for you to close that final chapter. I feel like
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, totally. Well, I definitely understand that. I actually just found a few minutes ago. I did find the book of yours that my friend had sent me. So he actually rapid fired them. So he sent me all 3 Ironstone Saga books. He was like, "Hey, these are your style books," and he's like, "You need to read them, and you need to interview this author. So I
thank you.
Getting those. Yeah, I'll be getting those tomorrow. Because I just first of all, I just love the concept, and I absolutely love the covers. And I trust my friends' recommendations. So any of them that know me. So
those covers were done by a lady called Pen Astridge, who's an Australian cover designer, and she is phenomenally skilled. Yeah, she's very good.
Oh my god, just amazing. Yeah. So I was like, he goes, trust me. He's like, he knows me. He's like, you're gonna want these in paperback. So he's like, just a physical copy, Dan. He's like, just do it. So yeah. So I'm really excited to go down and do that tomorrow.
Oh, thanks.
And speaking of your Ironstone saga, so for our audience, what are your Ironstone saga books about, and what are the Unforeseen series books about?
Okay, the Ironstone saga is about the main character is called Vida Ironstone, and he's an assassin who's sent on an important mission by his king into a neighboring kingdom. But inside the first chapter, he's killed. And his good friend Miriam basically tries to save him. And she first takes him to a medical doctor who attempts to save Vida, but he fails. And Vida's basically on the edge of death. She takes him to a witch. Before she gets to the witch, he dies. And what the witch does is she uses her power to imbue a nature spirit called Gorgoroth. And Gorgoroth is imbued into Vida's corpse. And in doing so, Gorgoroth drags Vida's spirit back in with him. So they both inhabit Vida's body. So now he's a man with two spirits living in him, human and a non-human spirit. And being incarnate gives Gorgoroth an incredible amount of power, much more power than he had just as a spirit. And Gorgoroth has no love of humans because humans have done so much damage to his world. He's a nature spirit. And in fact, one of his main missions is to kill us all. He wants to rid the earth of all humans. So the witch has saved Vida, but she's unwittingly set in place a chain of events that drags the empire into war and an absolute struggle for survival. So I thought that would be a cool story to follow. So I wrote that series based on that core concept. I won't go into more detail because I don't want to spoil it. But yeah, that's the Ironstone saga. The Unforeseen series is a contemporary military thriller, and it's about the Indonesian invasion of Australia. The Australian Defence Force is eventually defeated as a cohesive fighting unit, and we follow the story of a small group of Australian civilians who are fighting for survival, and they're fighting against insurmountable odds. And I suppose I wanted to choose Indonesia. Indonesia, as it stands today, don't have the capacity to invade Australia. And if they tried, I'm quite confident the Australian Defence Force would defeat them. The actual threat at the moment to Australia is China. And what makes it way more complex is China is also one of our biggest trade allies. So it makes the situation really complicated. I didn't want to get into that. I just wanted to have a basic threat, which is Indonesia. We do a little bit of trade with Indonesia, but we do a massive amount of trade with China. An interesting thing with what China's doing at the moment is our greatest military ally is United States of America, and they're northeast of us, and Australia is here. And China is moving south through the South China Sea, and they've taken over quite a few little island groups there. And they're also pushing into the Pacific, just northeast of Australia, in the middle between Australia and the United States. They're not using any military power at all. They're using economic might. And what they do is they use a thing called debt trap diplomacy. So they'll walk into Vanuatu, which they have done, and they said, we'd like to boost your tourism. We're going to walk in here. We're going to build you a massive port so it can service any of the largest cruise liners in the world to come and see a beautiful island. What do you think? And Vanuatu says, yeah, absolutely, man. So they build the port. Then they say Vanuatu, okay, you just need to pay us back in this amount of time. And they hoik up the percentage so high that Vanuatu can't make the repayment. So China then says, we notice you're having problems repaying the loan. what we'll do is we'll waive the loan. You don't need to pay that anymore, but we're going to lease, with no more to pay for us, we're going to lease the port off you for 99 years. And Vanuatu says, well, they're over a barrel. They have no choice. They have to give in. So now we have a port on the doorstep of Australia that is large enough to service any of the biggest cruise liners in the world, because it's quite deep water where they've put the port. But conversely, it's also big enough to service a Chinese carrier strike group. And they have two aircraft carriers at the moment, an old one and quite a new one, a brand new one. And they've done that in the Solomon Islands, and they're doing that in a few other island groups off the coast of Australia as well. So they're basically doing what the Japanese did in World War II.
Yeah.
Japanese did it militarily, but the Chinese are doing it economically, and they're so smart the way they go about it. They're playing straight out of Sun Tzu's The Art of War, and they're doing it underneath our noses. And people are saying, well, the Australian government, obviously they don't know what's going on. They do know what's going on, and they're trying to mitigate that risk. But at the same time, they don't want to lose their biggest trade ally as well. So it's a really complex situation. I don't know if they'll ever have a crack at Australia militarily. They certainly won't in my lifetime, and they probably won't in my son's lifetime. But I think at some point in the future, they may have a go.
Well, yeah, that's the thing that we talk about a lot, in terms of U.S. history with, World War II, just in general, is that, these, even World War I, is like, these German generals, let's just say in particular, had these plans not for, even in their own lifetime, they were really planning for, like that for several, and I think that, a lot of people, really don't understand that when it comes to, world history in general, is that, these people plan for the long game, of their country, not the short game. It's not that they necessarily need to see fruition there. Just, trying to add to, to that legacy, if you want to call it that. Yeah, it's we're dealing with that right now, with, so many people I know here in the United States who, not to get crazy political, but it's just truth. Some people don't like it. I teach history, so I speak truth. But when Ukraine gets invaded, I told my students, like, why is everybody so alarmed? I said, well, Putin literally looks right at the camera and says, hey, if any of you try to stop us, you'll see more death and destruction than ever before. I said, who do you think he was looking at? And it's particularly some of our kids whose parents think, our president should do more. And I'm like, well, what do you want him to do? Because that's a direct threat. That means World War III. And he's not looking at Canada, he's looking at Biden and the United States there, and NATO.
The Cold War days, hey?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's literally, I was like, holy moly. And there were so many things that popped up where I was just like, it was, it's crazy. And they were like, why are you guys so alarmed as history teachers? I'm like, because history is literally repeating itself.
And Putin is he's irrational enough to push the button too.
Yeah, he really is. Yeah, he really is. He worries me when he, in a few more years in particular, when he just, starts going. I don't know if it's true, but my uncle, had, so my uncle had, worked in the military, worked for the U.S. government, did like housing and things. And it's just interesting to hear some of the stories that he had heard, in terms of, different Russians and things, where, like someone like Putin would take certain things, let's say, to help them out, in terms of certain missions and things. And I always wonder if some of those things that he took, really start to affect your mind in particular and make you more irrational.
Possibly.
Particularly in the time period, in which, the Cold War was, with some drugs and things where, we thought like maybe they were okay, or, like, or aspirin or something like that. And it turns out that they, so I actually had watched a talk recently where a psychologist was talking about that. So it was kind of interesting to see, because he was comparing Putin with some of these other KGB agents and, some of these spies and, just different people, like that. In different parts of the world at different times, and saw some different psychological effects from some of the drugs or things they were taking, that they thought were okay. But yeah, pretty interesting. Pretty interesting talk. So yeah, it really made me think.
Yeah. I had
Yeah.
some feedback after I wrote the Unforeseen series, and people would say, "Why did Indonesia invade? There's no reason for them to invade. Why?" And I suppose Putin has proven that you don't need a legitimate reason to invade. You can
Yeah.
just do it if you have the capacity. You can just do it if you want.
Yeah.
End of story. And he did it, and he's causing a lot of grief, a lot of problems
Yeah, well, it's crazy
worldwide.
here, where people complain about gas and stuff, and I don't like paying more, but at the same time, I'm like, it's better than having to go overseas and fight in World War III. Like that's like my viewpoint on it, and
Mm.
I'm a pacifist, so, but it's also really hard to sit back, and a lot of us here just feel like it's hard
Are
to
you a
sit back and watch.
Are you a pacifist or are you a peace lover? Because they're two different things.
I guess maybe a peace lover is a better one, because if push
Mm.
comes to shove, I definitely will, I
Yeah,
will fight. If there's somebody on
you're
the
a peace
side of the
lover.
road, yeah, if there's somebody on this, I mean, my friends always tease me. I have, multiple black belts. I, you know, taught martial arts for, I don't know, like 2 decades now, almost. And,
Wow.
they're like, well, I'm ranked in 7 different martial arts now. I just love studying, but I know it's really not about that, because it's like anybody can get a lucky shot off. But yeah, they're like, well, you would definitely step in if someone had this issue or something. You see a little grandma on the
Yeah.
side row getting beat up. They're like, so that's not a pacifist. I'm like, okay, so maybe
No.
that's a better way to
So
put
a
it.
peace lover
But
is someone you don't look for a fight. You don't want to start a fight. You don't want to fight at all. But if you have to, you will.
Yeah. Well, it's hard because people that haven't been in a fight, you trying to explain to them, and I try to talk about that in books too, and try to make it more realistic, because even if you win, you lose because you might break your hand, or there might be legal trouble, or something, and I try to explain to people here, I'm like it's much better to pay a little bit more in gas than and try to solve it in a different way, because again, like you said, certain people aren't rational,
No.
and once that.
Definitely not Putin.
Well, yeah, and I think once you really look at World War I and World War II, I think people forget that whole nationalism thing, really led to a lot with alliances, and we're in the same boat even more than before, because now we have so many more nuclear weapons. But yeah, it's interesting climate. So I could definitely see, yeah, where yeah, it's interesting feedback for you, because I feel like a lot of people were saying that, for the last 17 years, with Russia in particular, and, in China. Because I remember being back in high school and stuff, and we were discussing this very probable thing that you just talked about with China, and it's very interesting that a lot of these things that, some of my professors in particular, mentioned at the university, where, they're like, hey, just wait. And, it's kind of crazy, to have something so off the wall, from almost 15 years ago, someone said that you thought was physically impossible. And then, here you go. And I have multiple professors call these things. It's like, it's really crazy if you, can actually take, and that's why I try to explain to our kids, or it's so, that's why I love writing about history or using it in books, because I think it gets people more interested in actually studying it, and yeah. So that's cool that you did that with Indonesia, and, kind of chose that. I think that would be a interesting analysis, to kind of compare that, with an invasion from China. I think that's really cool. Be an interesting,
thanks, man.
interesting
It's fun
writing
to write.
exercise. Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds really cool.
Yeah, it was good, man. It was. It would be easier too because Indonesia is way smaller than China, so it would be a bit more of a protracted fight. Whereas China, like, this is going to sound a bit arrogant, but the Australian Defence Force is one of the finest fighting forces in the world. But we are tiny. We're infinitesimal. China would just walk all over us. They just walk straight on. We might give them a bloody nose, but the book would last like half of the first book,
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Well, my friend said like that was like your other series, like other books that like he really liked. He said, he's really him and I really, enjoy the military thrillers. It's been a while for me. A couple years, I think I really got into some of the, I guess more than some of the Tom Clancy's, and just like different indie authors. There was oh my gosh, I'm totally going blank. There was one guy I met down in Phoenix. I thought it was Zero Dark 30. I thought was.
Oh yeah. Oh no.
Yeah.
Good
That
book.
was a
Awesome
good
book.
one. Yeah, I always liked I grew up on military fiction, and things like that. So anything like that, like the thrillers, I got really into. I really enjoyed the Jack Reacher books. I got into those.
Yeah.
During the winter.
I'm so glad they redid those shows. I never watched.
So
one with
good.
Tom Cruise because he's 4'2" and he jumps on the couch. I don't want to watch that.
Yeah.
But the new Jack Reacher,
so good.
Back here, Man Mountain, like it's the way he's supposed to be,
Yeah. And I felt like he got so I read. I've gotten half the Killing Floor down, and then but I had watched the show like back to back to back, like weeks, and then I like read half the Killing Floor. But I actually got to the Enemy, and I feel like the Enemy wasn't even that like action packed, but like just the way he wrote it, I'm like, who did the thing? Like who killed these people? I mean, I was like so stunned, and the way that he figured it out, I got such a I used to love thrillers and mysteries, and I always study them because I want to do that in a sci-fi or fantasy setting. I've seen people do that for Forgotten Realms and stuff, and it always just gets me so jazzed because I'm like, this is so cool, to combine these two different genres into fantasy or sci-fi. And thrillers, are the same thing. I always just think it's so cool when you can do that. I'm thinking like I would love to do like a Jack Reacher in space, like.
How cool would that be?
So right, like, but like
just
I'm
focus
not
on the Romans for now, mate.
but I'm just like not, like I'm not like I'm better at certain things, So like I feel like later on down the road, I'm like my friend, he's like, you're so crazy about mysteries and thrillers. I'm like, and horror too. I'm like, it's just so cool when somebody can like I had oh Richard Baker on, and he has some of the Marvel books where he's got Hamdell, and he's such an amazing author when it comes to combining fantasy and horror. And I told him, I was like, I absolutely love these books, and I read the first one in I don't know, I think it was in 8th grade of his, and it was just so cool. And he took like this undead army, and I mean, it didn't feel like fantasy; it felt like horror. But within the fantasy setting that I like, which was Forgotten Realms. So when he had these Heimdall books through Marvel, I like read the first one, and it was so good. And I mean, I definitely felt like there were really big odds, and the character had to overcome them. And how do you make Heimdall a god? Where you feel like, oh no, like there's something going to happen to him. And it was just such a great job of combining different genres. So I always just love thrillers personally.
It was Norse, like Norse.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, super cool. Yeah, he didn't take the Hamdo because they don't have the rights. Like Akane book doesn't have the rights for Disney's Marvel, just the original comic. So he couldn't. He was like, oh, I really wanted to do like Idris Elba Hamdo, who's my favorite. He's like, but I couldn't because of the rights. So he had to do it like the comics. But it was still really good. In my head, I just pictured like Idris Elba. But yeah, it was really really cool.
Sweet, man. So he's the guardian of Bifrost, isn't he? The Rainbow Bridge.
Yep. Yeah, and this is all about like how he gets to be the guardian of Bifrost. But yeah,
right, cool. Okay.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. It was really good. The first one's called like the Head of Mjolnir. I bought that one recently. I thought I like couldn't find it for a while because of the pandemic, and the covers are so cool. I wanted them, and I've always wanted to meet him. And he was talking to me about like what he's going to be doing book signings and stuff. So at some point, I'm gonna, I really want to get him signed with my Forgotten Realms. But
hell yeah, man!
It was just so cool.
Norse mythology, Norse mythology, Norse history. Yep. I did a DNA test last year before.
That's cool.
And 2% Norwegian. That means I'm a Viking.
Oh, that's awesome. I have 0. My friend's always teasing me though. He's like, yeah, he's like, you're like 48% Irish, and then like
most of mine was Irish.
He's like, maybe that's why you like martial arts so much. It's just like in your, fighting's in your blood or something like that. But
Scots Irish was most, and a little bit of Welsh.
Oh, that's cool.
Mostly Celt, but a little bit of Viking. Tiny bit of Viking.
That's really cool. That's an awesome mixture right there. Well, yeah. So I'm so glad that my friend, sent me, your books, particularly Ironstone Saga. So I was so surprised though to see that you wrote both things that I liked so much. So I thought that was super cool. But yeah, definitely the Ironstone Saga is definitely up my alley. So I'll be really excited to get those. So
Yeah, cool, man. I hope you enjoy it.
Oh, I'm sure I will. He has not steered me wrong yet, so it's been awesome. Um, so we'll go with that fourth one there. What has been the single hardest thing for you when it comes to getting your books written and then ready to sell?
I would say for me, it's self-discipline.
That's a good one.
And the will to sit down and write, even when I don't feel like it. Some days I'm just tired, exhausted. I just don't feel like it. And those days can be a real bloody grind, hey. And you don't feel like writing, but you kind of have to. So you sit down, and once I start, I get into the swing of things. I'm fine, but it's just that initial pushing myself to sit down and start writing for that day.
Yeah.
Because I think if I sat down and I wrote just only when I felt the inspiration, or I felt like writing, I'd never freaking finish a book. So
yeah.
That's been the single hardest thing for me.
Yeah. I always worry about that too. Just in general, because I feel like it's hard enough without having a baby. like
Man, I think you work your life around. Hey, you work your life around.
I just told my buddy, I was like, I've been practicing, another author friend of mine, she had a baby recently, cute little girl, and we, we're talking about it, and I said, oh, I'm so worried. It's before our interview, and I was like, I'm so worried about, not being disciplined. She goes, Dan, she goes, you just get disciplined now. And I was like, okay. She goes, yeah, like practice. She goes, I do. So she actually has really helped me because I followed her advice. I've been doing the writing sprints again, but just for 15 minutes. She's like, oh, my kid would nap for 15 minutes. She goes, and then, I would go do something.
Writing sprint, that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, right? She's like, oh, you just do it for 15 minutes. She goes, if your kid takes an hour nap, she goes, you could get 4 writing sprints done. She goes, even if you only get 2. She's like, how fast do you write? So I said, well, I told her, and I'm like, well, if I write and sit down for an hour, I was like, I usually get like 2,000 words. She's like, well, a lot of traditional authors, like that's, what they might get in a day to like 5,000, So she's like, doing that in 4 sections, 4 15-minute sections isn't bad. She's like, even if you only get, like 500, she's like, that's still a book a year, like at least, if not 2. And I was like, okay, that's a good point. So I have to say, instead of keeping track of word count, I've been doing that, and I have blown through. Like I guarantee you, I have blown through my goal and cap for this first novella because I just was worried about the time and just to keep writing. And then when I get 3, I'm like, well, I might as well, when I have time throughout the day, I might as well get a 4th one down, and then I'll get that 4th one down. Well, then I'll be in a flow. So she says that when she,
I'm gonna give that.
Yeah,
a go, man.
so she says when she picks the baby up, right? She'll do whatever. She breastfed, whatever. And then, baby get conked back out. Well, she'd have like 30 minutes, she's, on parental leave. So she'd be like, boom, 15 minutes there. She said by the time she got done, she just was so used to that, she got her first book done. I think she said she got like 46,000 words done within, like a month and a half. And I'm like, well, that's a lot faster. Yeah. I was like,
that's impressive.
With a baby. Yeah. But she's like all in 15-minute intervals. And then times where, the baby was really struggling, or, something like that. She would just do 5-minute intervals, 10-minute intervals, but she just got so used to stacking them in her free time, which was only a few minutes here and there sometimes, that, by the end of the day, she got an hour. And I'm like, it blew my mind, and I'm like, there's no way that works that efficiently. So I've been practicing now, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I never thought they would work that well for me doing them by myself, because I used to do them with online friends a lot. Because there was a guy, actually, it's funny because he was my writing sprint partner. He actually lived in Sydney. So when I would get out of work at like 9 to 10, he would, just be getting done with his job midday. So then we would write together, and, we'd do it for an hour and a half. It was really helpful. But I was really worried when he switched shifts, because I was like, well, now I have to, do writing sprints by myself. So that's when Jed Hearn on Twitter had suggested to me to do like word count. So I switched to word count. well, then I got burnt out from that. So yeah, I'm really glad that she suggested doing writing sprints again.
I, I have to say, I have focused on word count, and it's interesting you talk about burnout because you're so focused on hitting that word count that maybe the story takes a hit as a result of that.
Yeah, because you stop your flow. Whereas now, like, and I keep going, and then what happens is, and I'm hoping this continues to happen when our baby's born, where it's like it nags at me, where I'll get 15 minutes done, and I'll be somewhere where it's like I know exactly where I'm going, but I ran out of time. So instead of writing out of words, I ran out of time. Well, running out of time makes me want to add more time. So then I write again as soon as I have more time. And
that's a much better way of looking at it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think my friend made a good point the other day. He was like, you just got to mix it up a little bit more, and I was like, yeah, I'm really glad that I have learned over the years to not. My mom was just talking about this with myself because I feel like, she's like, you're just one of those people where you're just like, you just don't waste time, like if someone has a better way, you're just like, I'm just going to do that. And I'm like, it's just so much easier to listen to people, So I'm really glad that people have suggested things, but also I think if I wasn't doing the podcast, people wouldn't feel comfortable to suggest things. So yeah, I'm really glad that both of them had suggested things at different times because it's worked for me alternate parts of the year, school year in particular, because I get really burnt out by the end and I still have to write. And yeah, so I'm so glad that she said that because I've definitely I've gotten basically this whole novella done. And then I'll be on the second one here within the next couple of days.
And you'll be on to the Romans.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I want to read it, man.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. My buddy is like, he's like so excited. He was like, oh my gosh. Because I told him a lot more and he's like, oh, that's really neat. That's really neat. So yeah, I'm hoping I had some interesting ideas pop up for it. So I think it'll be really fun. But yeah, if nobody wants it, in terms of querying, I'm just gonna self-publish it and I'll just sell more copies than them anyway, and they'll be regretting it. But I definitely agree with you though, Keith. Self-discipline is like it's just. I think so many people in the audience can relate to that, because you think after work or after whatever, I don't know. I've just made it where I have to do at least 15 minutes every day, and I have at least one writing sprint, and I have found that, that's usually when I get about 500 words. And
man, that's so good. 15 minutes. 15 minutes of work to get 500 words out is.
It's taken me so long. It's just going back to self discipline. It's like the last year, I'm like, if I don't do it that day in that minute, it's like, and just don't flow. I literally get rid of all distractions. That's what I was saying to my wife. I was like, if you can just give me like an hour a day, where I was like, I'll do everything else the rest of the time. I was like, just give me an hour in a day. I was like, I'll just put my music on. I'm so used to it now, just crunching. But I feel like it's so hard when I was focused on self-discipline of writing and I was like, okay, I have to get this book done. Well, when I got burned out on it, it was like I felt like I had to, then I wasn't getting it done, and I was trying to self-discipline. And that's where my friend was like, Mark Timoney's like, well, you should just take a break if it's not working, and he's like, you got plenty of other things. So I felt like some people think self-disciplining is, just staying on this project if it's not working because I have to finish. But it's like, no, I'm an indie author, I can actually, go and do that. So I went to, because I was still writing and I was writing every day. I was writing a lot because then I went into this, historical urban fantasy with these Romans versus zombies. And I was just busting out the words. And then, then that's what helped me fix my urban fantasy stuff with the Recon Marine Monster Hunter. And then it was like, and I'm just can only imagine when I'm done, with those where then I feel like won't be burnt out. I'll have products done and then I can go back. So I just think it's interesting because I was listening to a talk with another author on their podcast and they were like, well, self-discipline, I think is a little bit different. It doesn't mean I have to get this thing done unless, you have a deadline or traditionally published for it. But, I think it's just, for me at this point, I haven't published anything yet officially. So it's like kind of nice, because my self-discipline looks a little bit different. So I just think it does depend, I feel like, on where you're at with your career or your interests. But yeah, that burnout, man. It's just self discipline and burnout worry me, the
Mm.
most. And, particularly not being a full time author, I just think that, and then what happens if when you do become a full time author and you haven't worked on your self discipline or your burnout? I think that
Yeah.
I just think they're two hand in hand skills personally.
Those people who are full time authors, I take my hat off to them because they got to work to timelines, and that would be
Yeah, yeah,
so stressful.
yeah,
That you have to get this book done and finished by this time,
yep,
or you lose your job basically.
yeah,
That's pretty full on.
yeah, yeah. It's right on the money. I feel like that you said right there. I mean, it's just it is stressful, and I talk. That's why I talk to my buddy about all the time. I'm like, well, that's why feel like we got a pretty good rapid release schedule, and my buddy's like, well, if we're not ready for you to rapid release, we just don't release. We just we're released. That's why I like the novellas because we could rapid release the novellas, and that's 9 months right there. Well, you're talking a year and a half basically, um, and I'll definitely have Romans versus Zombies done. I pretty much have all the outlining and stuff done. And it's a lot more exciting to
Cool.
do than than anything
Oh
else.
hell yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, but that self discipline, it definitely worries me. So I definitely think that that's a good one. I think a lot of people, can definitely relate to that one there. But
I think once you hit your routine and you get into that routine, it just becomes muscle memory. You just do it.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. Well, as soon as I start that time, that's funny you said that. As soon as I start that timer now, I mean that first one, I mean, even if I just do a couple, like you said, just get something down. Uh, yeah, I've definitely noticed that it flows a lot more. And then, once I get the first 15 done, I'm like, okay, I got to do another one.
You're into it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, just
yeah.
yeah. And the time is, I'm a competitive person, so I like to beat myself. So I'm like, okay, I want to do more writing sprints than yesterday, and I haven't even counted words lately because I'm just trying to get. I'm like, well, if I just put the minutes in, I know the words are going to come,
I'm
and
going
the
to
word
stop
count is
counting
going to go up.
words.
Yeah,
I'm going to stop counting words after what you said. That then
I
your brain.
recommend it, man.
Mm.
I'm so glad that they both said that. I mean, and to have two people say it in a different way, that really made sense. I felt like was a really good one. But yeah,
Hell yeah, it's awesome.
yeah, I don't know. If it doesn't work, try it. Go back to word count. But I was
Yeah, yeah.
feeling so swamped by it, and I actually, I'll be honest with you, Keith. Like I was keeping such good track of my word count every day, but then I noticed that I was focusing more on the Excel spreadsheet and the word count rather than the words I was putting on the page.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I feel like the quality's gone up a lot because I'm worried about what I'm writing. I don't even know how many words I have in my novel now, my novella. Like I was at like around 13,000, and I might be around 25 now. And I mean, it's this last bit since I stopped word counting has just gone so much quicker. And I definitely know I'll have to go back and fix the beginning stuff because this stuff has just been so much better. But yeah, I
I'll have to give
definitely,
it a go, man.
yeah,
Sure.
I highly recommend it. I mean, definitely
Yeah.
worked for me, but and I think that's for the audience too. Like if something, you know, isn't working for you, try something else. Because you never know when you're going to find like your thing and and better your routine. And if you're not being productive with it, I don't think it's the best thing for you, or at least not at that time. Like it might not be good for me later. Maybe I'll need the word count or something like that to get through a particular project or or
Mm.
something. But yeah, I'm all for mixing it up. But
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure, man. You got
I
to
highly
have
recommend.
flexibility.
Yeah, yeah, totally. What is one character? Sorry, who is one character that you have written who you wish you could go on an adventure with, and why?
It'll be Rafe.
Oh,
Rafe
that'd be
is
cool.
he's a character in the Einstein saga. He is a berserker, Highland berserker,
Oh, that's awesome.
and he is effing crazy.
My kind of guy.
Absolutely friggin' crazy. So there'd never be a dull moment. And if anything's going on that's abnormal, or there'd be a fight or the life of the party, or if anything's happening that's abnormal, he'd be in the middle of it. 100%. Yeah, so I'd go on an adventure with Rafe, sure.
That's awesome. I won't say my buddy's name on here, but one of my friends had said, "Yeah, that's like our buddy," and he was explaining to me him. So I'll have to say that that's the person who said, but the character who said that's really funny. Yeah, it's hilarious. He's like, yeah, he's just like him. And then we went on a trip recently, and he was, it sounded very similar. So yeah, I got him in real life if you ever want to meet him. So
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
that's really cool. Well, that's awesome. I think about that a lot though, because Robert E. Howard was said to have write Conan, but his friend had said that he'd be off because he used to write on his patio, like his porch, and his friend would sit there and come over, have a beer or something, and all of a sudden he would be sitting there at his writing desk, be like, I need a minute, and then he'd be looking off and he would start writing, and he said that it was almost like Conan had come to visit instead of him, and he was talking, telling Robert E. Howard a story while he was sitting there. And sometimes he would just have his beer or whatever
That's
while
awesome.
he was writing. Yeah, it was really cool. So that's where I got that idea from. I'm like, oh, that would be really cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
It actually reminds me of a story Stephen King told. So Stephen King many years ago was hit by a car. He was in a really bad accident, very badly injured. And the guy who hit him stopped, and Stephen King's in a ditch screaming in agony. And this guy gets out of his van, pulls his esky out, walks slowly over to where Stephen King is, sits on his esky and gets the phone out and rings an ambulance. And he turns to King and goes, "You'll be right, mate. Your ambulance is on the way. You'll be fine." And Stephen King thinks he's dying. He looks up at this guy, and he realizes, holy shit, this is a character out of one of my books. This guy's a freaking psycho. And I've met one of my own characters, He had, he'd hit him, almost killed him, and then just had no emotion as to what had happened.
Wow.
Didn't look after King, didn't render first aid, just sat on his esky. Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy.
Pretty scary.
Yeah. Nuts. All right, well, we definitely want to meet yours instead. So.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. So the next one's going to be I'm really interested in this answer because this has been one that I added recently, and I'm so glad it was a suggestion by an author friend of mine. I've had very just interesting answers. Like everybody's been very unique and different. What is one writing tool or strategy you would like to try in the future? It could be like anything, really.
I'd like to try my hand at first person writing a character in the first person.
Interesting.
Just to say I've done it.
Yeah.
I have to say that I'm not sure when I'd try that. I'm not sure I'd be any good at it either, to be honest.
I know that feeling.
I know that the books that I've read that are in first person take me about a chapter to get into because it just jolts my brain.
Yeah.
And then I'm away. I'm right. And David Gemmell, back to Gemmell again, because I just love him, mate. He's such a good writer. He has written a couple of books in the first person, and it always took me about a chapter to get into it.
Okay.
Not many, but a couple.
Yeah.
And and by the time your brain has got past the first person idea, you're fine. It's just like any other story, but it's somehow more personalized. You're somehow more immersed in the story somehow, if you know what I mean.
No, yeah, totally. Like the Dresden Files, I feel like is a big one for me, and Iron Druid Chronicles and Mercy Thompson. I think that's why I like them. I'm writing urban fantasy, not my historical urban fantasy, but my urban fantasy in first person. I just feel like the books that I've enjoyed the most in that genre have been first person, and it's because of that. Yeah, I feel like I get a better connection with the character.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I don't read them that often though.
Yeah, it's literally only urban fantasy that I like. Like if it's I don't know. I guess I do read some fantasy first person. It's not my preferred, but urban fantasy it is for some reason. Science fiction, no, I don't like it in science fiction.
No,
I have no idea why, but yeah, it's just like an urban fantasy thing for me. I don't know. It's interesting. Well, that's a good one. Yeah.
I'll give that a crack, I reckon.
Yeah.
I don't know when I will, but I'll give it a
go. Yeah, that's cool. I recommend it though. It definitely made me think more of writing in third person. Like, oh, am I conveying this to the audience in a different way? Am I just assuming that they're understanding these things? Am I showing rather than telling, things like that. I felt like it definitely, when I flip back, I definitely learned a lot from the experience. So I definitely felt like it made my third person a lot better.
More powerful.
Yeah, totally. It's a very interesting writing exercise. But so who is? Well, I guess you know this, right? Who is one author?
You already know what I'm going to say, man.
Well, I want to know like what you would want to hear from them. But so who is one author you would like to ask for writing advice if you could choose anyone from any time period? And now I want to know, what type of writing advice would you ask David Gemmell? Like, what would be the one thing that you're like, I need to know this? Like, you only had like 15 minutes, all right? And what would you ask, or what would you want help on?
Well, you guessed, David Gemmell. I want help on how do you write such complex, powerful worlds and characters in such a short
not
novel?
very big.
Those novels are only about 300, 350 pages.
Yep.
And they're so powerful and so complex. And I'd ask him that and I'd listen to what he had to say. He had such an incredible impact on me. I first read Waylander when I was 12 years old. And then I read all his books all through my formative years to a teenager and a young man. And I think that had impact on me growing up. And when he died in 2006, I was in an area of the world that had no internet, no telephones, no connection to the outside world. And when I came home to Australia, I was waiting for his next book to drop. And then he died in July, I think. And then I came home at the end of August 2006. And I was freaking devastated, mate. I was gutted.
Yeah.
He was such a brilliant writer. And Stella, I think his last book was Full of Kings, and Stella wrote the last part of it. And you can't tell where he stopped and she took over. She did such a brilliant job.
Yeah.
She found him slumped over his laptop in the morning. She was bringing his coffee into him. And she thought he was just sleeping, but yeah, he was dead, unfortunately. Yeah, very sad.
Yeah.
I'd ask him that, yeah.
That's a really good one. Oh man, I know that feeling, and I'm totally blanking. I feel so bad. There was an author that I was reading when I was a kid, that same thing, and it was like, I remember my mom, like, because we didn't have the internet at the time, and I must have been like middle school. I can't remember. I have to ask. I can't remember what it was now. Probably blocked it out. It was too bad of a memory. But yeah, I just remember like, oh, this is the last book that I will ever get of this person, and this is the last time that this character. And I remember when Robert Jordan passed away too. Like, I wasn't into the books at that time, but it was still such a big deal for me because one of my best friends was, and just when it happened relatively, the two authors died at the same time, and it was very hard. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's like,
and that's
it's like a friend,
Exactly, man. Well, it's almost like with Gemmell, it was more, and probably Sean Crow's probably similar, but it was more of a personal connection because it was a friend, but because I'd read him at such a young age and through my formative years, it was almost like another mentor in addition to my father.
Yeah. Well, when Obi-Wan Kenobi, sorry if anybody hasn't seen, A New Hope, but it's been out for decades. When I remember, I was feeling so bad. I can't remember the author that I used to read, but it's just so many now. I guess it's hard to remember, But I remember then that was such a time where I was so into Star Wars. Where later on that weekend, my buddy, it must have happened on like a Wednesday or Thursday, because I remember this specifically. Then we had a half a day on Thursday, so I go to my buddies, and then by Friday we were watching A New Hope again. And that was always our routine. New Hope on Friday, Saturday Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, Sunday morning. And I remember once Obi-Wan, surrenders to Darth Vader and becomes, one with the Force, that weekend in particular, it hit me. And I totally get what you mean. I was like, I just couldn't handle it. I had seen it 100, 1,000 times at that point, but that was the minute where it just hit me, because I think that's why, because I was like, oh, my mentor's gone, and not just the characters, but
it's weird. It sounds weird when you say it, but that's how it feels.
Yeah. And like R.A. Salvatore, built some characters for me that I found in middle school, same time, and then when I became, I think I read one of the books like 4 years ago. Like so I could be with five. It was 4 years ago, and he asked recently, "What were some books that made you cry?" And I was like, "Ghost King and Gonhedrum." He responded, and he goes, "Really, Dan? Back to back?" I said, "You know exactly what I'm talking about, Bob." And he just laughed. And I was like, "Yeah." And I just, it was the same thing. I feel like, where I was just like, you know, oh my gosh. My friend was like, "Oh, rumors are he's going to kill Dritz at some point." And I was like, "I hope to God not, because I would be so devastated, because I feel like I was in such a, you know, spot in my formative years where he, not just, Bob's writing, but that character really, helped me decide who I wanted to be in difficult situations, and if that character, if he killed that character, I would just be so devastated. Like I would literally feel like a family member, had passed away at that point. Particularly when a couple of the other characters, I mean, my mom was like, "Are you okay?" I read it on I think the Ghost King on Christmas break when I was home from teaching, after meeting my wife, and I was like, "No, I'm really not." I was like, "I just need to." I was like, "I just need to be left alone for a little bit," And yeah, it was really bad. Yeah.
I raged a little bit when Ned Stark was killed. Eh?
Oh,
What the?
I remember when I was at guy. I used to watch that for guys' night, and um, yeah, my friend was like, "Oh, I was ready for it because I read the books." I was like, "It's my best friend." I was like, "You're my best friend." I was like, "You didn't warn me at all." He's like, "Good." He's like, "It's Sean Bean. He dies in everything," and I was
Yeah,
like,
he's right.
"I was like, but national treasure." I was like, I couldn't believe it.
Have you seen that little video that Sean Bean does? It's like goes for like 5 minutes. Have you seen that one where
I had,
they say you're not going to die in this, Sean,
yeah,
and he still makes himself die.
yeah. I absolutely loved his character. I just thought like he was so he inspired me so much in his portrayal in Lord of the Rings. I wrote several
Yep.
characters, about that and overcoming corruption and things like that, and just the yeah, I don't know, just his look too, like
Yeah.
yeah, he just
That's
I
always
thought he did
the
such
way
a
I
good job.
imagine Boromir as well.
Yeah, I think that was really what it was. Is for me, it just totally. That's how I pictured him in my head. I
You
was.
notice? Sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Um, the braces that Boromir was wearing when he died.
Yep.
Aragorn took them, and in the
Yeah.
movies, at the end of the third movie, he's still wearing them.
Yep. Yep.
Which is
Yep.
pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love those movies. So I'm hoping that with Rings of Power, I'm hoping I can get, if he's listening, my best friend to watch it, because he's not into Lord of the Rings, and I think it's because the first movie took so long to get going, and I'm really trying to get him into the show so that I can get him into it, because
That's
I
the
just
Amazon
like
Prime one.
yeah, and I know people are like, "Oh, blah blah blah," but I want
Watch
to
it. Yeah.
I want to be in that world so bad. Like,
Mm.
and there's the Middle Earth games, like the One Ring work, like the D&D style. It's like 5e or whatever. But they did them as Kickstarters, and I want to get them so bad. Um, I used to play, a lot of the video games. I think I played almost all the video games except for the two newer ones, especially back in the day when they're console and stuff. And those are some of my favorite times, was watching those movies with my friends, or playing the games,
Yeah.
and I just love the
It's
world
so
that he
good.
built, and
Yeah.
yeah, I'm like,
Amazing.
so my wife, she goes, "Oh, did you hear about this Lord of the Rings TV show?" I said, "Honey," I said, "that's the only reason we have Amazon Prime." I was like, I didn't buy it for Wheel of Time, no offense. I was like, I bought it for Reacher and for
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
That's
the
the reason
boys.
I switched to Amazon to watch Lord of the Rings,
Yep, yep.
and I'll probably unsubscribe once I've watched that.
Yeah, I thought about that. Well, then my buddy's like, "Well, you can't." He goes, "Because then Reacher 2." I said, "But then I heard that
True,
they're
yeah.
doing a long. Well, I heard that they're doing a longer stint in between. So I think we got like another, because it's already been like almost like 3 months or whatever. So I heard we have like another year and 3 months or something like that. Because I know they're like shooting now, but I guess they had some sort of. I heard they had a delay. That's what I read an article recently.
Oh,
So
right, yeah.
yeah, so I was like, "Oh,
There's
that's fine." But
There's a few. That's one of them I'm waiting for, and I'm waiting for The Witcher season 3.
Yep.
It's going to be awesome.
Oh, I'm so surprised. It's funny that you brought that up. I was just talking about this with my buddy earlier. I was just so surprised, like what some people. I don't know. Maybe it's because like my wife and I were trying to have a child this year, for most of the year, and I don't know. I guess I just got really emotional because I coach girls, so like exclusively. I've coached boys for a long time, and girls are just easier to manage at the high school level. And I've just had great relationships with them, and taught them a lot of great stuff. They've taught me a lot of great stuff. Um, and yeah, it hit me so hard. I think because we wanted a baby so bad, and it was taking a while. And yeah, when that came out, I was just like, I connected so much more with Geralt this time than the first season, and there were just so many more scenes. I was just like I got it. I was like, yep, like I would do that for any of my my children now, let alone my own kids. So I like totally understood that. And I think as a teacher too, you know like I don't know, I felt more connected with this character this season. And it was interesting, I felt like the other people weren't. And as a writer, I was like, I think I like that because I like people that protect children. I like I don't know if you've ever seen the TV show Burn Notice. It's a really good
No.
one. Oh, it's I highly recommend it. It was on Hulu. It was on Netflix and it switched to Hulu.
Okay.
The main character is a spy, and it's kind of like a spy thriller TV show, but it's written so well. But the main character, I don't know how to explain it. Like he was mistreated by his father. His father was like alcoholic and physically abused him and stuff, and his mom, and like he as an adult becomes a spy, but he wants to overcome that trauma by helping other people and kids in particular. And there's so many times throughout the show where they just wrote it so brilliantly, where a kid is messed with, and he just demolishes everybody. And I'm like, I connected with that so much, and I loved it. And then I love that show. And then when they did that with season two, my friend's like, well, it's because you like the main character from Burn Notice, Michael Weston, so much. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's totally true, And he was like, if you were Geralt and you had his powers, he was like, I could totally see you doing that, to rescue a kid or whatever. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, yeah, I was like that. I was like, that's what I would love to do. So I felt like they did a really good job there, but it
Yeah,
was definitely made for me. Yeah, it was.
it's a great story, and they're
Yeah,
awesome characters. I
that
kind of like the
ending
way,
too.
Geralt just walks into a room and goes, F word, and then walks out.
Just so cool. I tell you, man, Henry Cavill was the best pick. Like,
Yeah,
I think, I literally think Heath Ledger was the best pick for the Joker, and I didn't even like him at first when I heard it, but
100%.
he was so amazing. And I think Henry Cavill and Geralt is. I think that's like for me tied at the two best castings. Within the last 10, whatever, however many years is this Dark Knight. I mean, yeah, I was saying to my buddy the other day, I was like, I think Henry Cavill was the best casting after Heath Ledger. I mean, like by far. Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah,
We can talk about that TV show all day.
yeah, I love it, man.
I love the books too. I'm like so excited. I started to read the second book, um, and then my friend, he's like, wait, he's like, I just read, the first one. I was like, so can we book club them? So I'm like waiting, but I told him I was like, I can't wait much longer because, yeah, the second season of the show really got me back into it. But I really would like to read the graphic novels too. I keep forgetting to go
David
back
Gibble's
to
got a
those.
couple of graphic novels too, by the way.
Oh, you should have told me that because now I'm gonna have to go get those.
Yeah, I need two of them. I needed two of them. We should have done the whole lot, but no, I need two.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. I love graphic novels. That was my original medium, so it's like definitely my thing. But that's really cool. Actually, I'm gonna have to.
Yeah, they're awesome. Like he did Jon Snow when he did Legend. Legend's a graphic novel, and then Wolf in Shadow, I think.
Oh, that's
which
really
is the
cool.
Jon Snow one. That's actually one of the endings that choked me up when you were talking about books that made me cry. When Jon Snow died. Right at the end.
Wow. Oh, that's really cool. I'll have to check that out. That's awesome. Well, for that last one, do you have any promos, news, updates, or current projects that you are currently working on?
I do. You're going to laugh at this. I'm currently in the planning phase of a new story from the point of patient zero in a zombie outbreak.
Oh, that's cool.
As experienced from the viewpoint of Australian paramedics.
That is cool.
Yeah. Zombie outbreaks results. I wanted to make it fairly realistic. So the zombie outbreak is a result of something that exists. I don't want to go into too much detail, but something that exists in the world today that has never crossed across and infected human beings. But I suppose that there might be a possibility. But yeah, it's something that could happen. Very, very unlikely, but yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
Slim possibility. I don't know if you know, but I work as a paramedic over here in Australia. So I wanted to, they say write what you know. So
yeah.
I don't know much about zombies, but I know about paramedics and how we operate. So it'd be interesting to see it from our point of view.
Yeah.
From the very, very start of the outbreak and then how it progresses from there and how we try and deal with it, how they try and deal with it.
Oh, that's really cool. Well, that sounds very interesting. It's really neat. I didn't know that about you, so now I'm gonna have to pick your brain because I have this fantasy paramedic that I've wanted to write for a while, and I just thought it'd be so cool, like have it be like a healer and like a field medic, and go through a story.
Fantasy. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
No worries.
Yeah. I'm telling you, Keith, I love the mashups. Like, I want to take something real with somebody like you who knows it, and then put it in like a fantasy world and then see kind of how it goes. I've seen quite a few people do that recently, and that's just like what I've been, really interested in reading the last couple of months. But yeah, and I was like, oh, that just sounds like really cool to write. But yeah, but that's another one too, like, zombie, apocalypse and paramedic. Like, I have to know now as a writer how that works for you, and how that story. Yeah, like that's a really cool idea. Like, yeah, that's really cool. Anybody can write a soldier, shooting the zombies. Like, I want something different. I want something unique. And the more I write, the more, I want to read something like that.
I think other people do too, especially in the zombie genre as well, where it's just been, in some ways, it's been done to death.
Yeah.
There's always a virus. There's always a couple of survivors. No offense to anyone. I shouldn't say that. But yeah, I think being unique is a good thing.
Well,
bringing a fresh look at it is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, but I think at any point, you have, it's like, so my friend C.S. Ratliff, he has his Harry Potter like Academy book, Lucas Hale, coming out, and I backed him on Kickstarter. It sounds really good. He's like, only the first section is like Harry Potter's, everything else is my own. And he was like, well, I wanted to do this years ago, but perfect. Yeah, but I just think that just sounds like a really cool idea. I think that, in terms of like a writer, it just sounds like a really cool story, just mixing zombies. And it's cool that you get your actual experience in there too. I think that's like, yeah, I think that's a really good idea.
I want to do one of the first scenes I want to do is doing a cardiac arrest on a patient, and then they work on her for a period of time. She's not responding to their treatment, so they call it what we call calling it, and she's deceased. We have to let the family know. Look, we've tried everything. We've tried everything that would have happened in hospital. Your mum hasn't responded, and we're very sorry. And then the mum gets up and starts trying to attack them.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be awesome.
I'm gonna have a lot of fun with it. It's gonna be good.
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot of situations that you could have like a lot of fun with like that, and kind of, like we said, not, I don't know, yeah, like, just to add a different twist, like, kind of, make it a little bit more updated, in terms of, like your, because you have that experience. So I think I think that just sounds much more interesting than another Brad Pitt-esque character coming in and, shooting all the zombies, you know. Like
That was a cool movie though.
it really was. It really was. It really was. Well, I just think it's
I,
interesting with that. Yeah. It's really
I have
cool.
to say, I did really enjoy The Walking Dead.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Up to a point.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was so well done. Yeah.
Yeah, those graphic novels too. I feel like I mean I always like the graphic novels more than the TV show. I think again it's because that was the medium I
Yeah.
started with. But
Mm.
you know, for a lot of different, like Invincible, you know, like I enjoyed the episodes I've seen so far, but there was nothing like discovering that graphic novel for the first time. And when it first came out and being like one of the first people to be like, oh, this was really cool, you know, this is really unique. And I was just talking to my buddy about it because we saw a bunch recently. I couldn't believe how many they have now, you know. And I told him I was like, I have the first one that you know
Oh, wow.
that they published, and it's you know it's crazy to be where I told a buddy of mine I read it in oh my gosh maybe 30 minutes, you know, like the whole thing, and um I reread it. I reread it, and I like handed it to him. I was like, here, you can borrow this, but I want it back. He's like, why? Because we usually, you know, share them and stuff back in the day. And I was like, this is gonna be worth some money. I was like, this is gonna be a big thing. And then at 5 years went by, and he's like, yeah, right. And like now, you know, I think it's probably like I don't know, 14 years or something like that. So it's kind of interesting, you know, to see things shift. But yeah, I was
That's so
right
cool,
one of
man.
these days. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's really cool. But yeah,
I think
maybe
it'd be awesome if they made David Gemmell's Legend into a movie. The whole book is just a massive siege. The
yeah,
whole
that
movie would be a
really
siege,
cool.
just a battle. That'd be so cool.
Well, I love the Two Towers because of that, you know, because it's basically just like a pretty big, you know,
Yeah.
siege like the whole time. Yeah. I feel like, you know, Sean Crow and I were talking about it, and I was talking about it with like Mark Timoney and a couple other people. You know, I definitely think that yeah, David Gemmell, in particular, after watching the first couple episodes of The Sandman on Netflix, and you know, seeing the new Dungeons and Dragons trailer in particular, I just think that like they would do such a good job. I think Netflix with a TV show. You know, if they had the people who, you know, like you and Sean who were so into it, you know, if you had the right people, I think it'd be so cool, you know,
Like,
to do some of the books that way.
that's what I liked about Peter Jackson is he respected the books so
Yeah.
much that he just, you know, because you know how some of those producers and directors and writers deviate so much from the books for whatever
Yeah.
reason. I don't know why.
It's not even the same product anymore.
No,
Yeah.
no. But they did such a good job with Lord of the Rings. It was there's a few things that were left out. Tom Bombadil didn't make an appearance, and he's such a powerful character. But
Yeah.
there's only so much they can put in, and they did a good job, I reckon. Hey,
Well, you know, it's like Batman Begins. You know, like they had changed things, but you know, I think this is early on. I learned as an audience member, like if you changed it and you did it well enough, I enjoyed it. You know, and if you changed it for a particular reason to help my enjoyment, I enjoyed it more. And that's like I used to watch this TV show Smallville. You know, I love that, and there's so many things that they changed, but I thought they did a really good job there with a lot of the writing. And, you know, I just think that, you know, if you do a good job with it, you know, like you know, read the first two books for Lord of the Rings, and, you know, I mean, I enjoyed the Hobbit movies. The Hobbit's my favorite book. So I wish, you know, it had been, you know, like Legolas isn't there and stuff, you know, and, but you know, I was like, I just separated them after that. I was like, okay, it's cool movies and, you know, it's a good book.
that's
like,
a
I
good
enjoyed
point.
them, but
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
but I think I
separating
had
the
to,
book from the movie. Yeah,
yeah, I think I had to learn that skill over time. Yeah, but you know, because I mean, I don't know. That's why I love books more than movies and you know things like that or graphic novels even because I think you can just do more. You know, like you said, you know, David Gemmell does so much, you know, with that little book, you know, versus
yeah.
you know, and
There's a lot of those fantasy books out there that authors are writing. They're like this freaking thick. They're like Lord of the
Yep.
Rings.
Yeah.
And but David Gemmell's got it just seems to have just as much kick as those books in just so much smaller space.
Well,
you know?
it is really interesting for me, and this is why I told Sean because we had just had our other interview for his Godless Lands too. Recently, a few weeks ago, I was like, he's like, "Have you got it yet?" I'm like, "No," because I'm like, I'm really trying to save certain books. Like I said, you know, I want the time to be able to enjoy them, but I also want to be able to use them. I've been using a lot of those kind of things and those experiences, um, you know, as like a really good writing experience. And I know if I start with them now, I'm going to be too busy. I'm going to cheapen that.
You're gonna get hooked, man.
Yeah, and I want to be hooked, to the point where I just fly. And I've been waiting for another author to do that. And particularly, when I hear you guys talk and like Anthony Ryan talk about David Gebel, I'm like, okay, I know he's going to be the one. And I'm glad that I waited now in terms of my writing schedule, because I feel like I'm going to need that reading push to help me finish up with the writing, if that makes sense. So yeah. But I would love from like what is it, the one I just found was a paperback, and I gave it to my buddy. I had the hardcover of what is it,
David Gebel book?
Yeah, The Sword of Night and Day.
Oh yeah.
Swords of Night and Day. Yeah, so that one, like the first time I saw that cover, I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is gonna be my book. Like, and I could just like feel it from across the bookstore. We like saw each other, looked deep into each other's eyes, and I ran up to it. It didn't run up to me, so that was kind of disappointing. But yeah, it was. Yeah, I think I have. That Legend. I grabbed quite a few of them because there was a really good sale that came recently, actually, right before Memorial Day weekend here, and they always have the David Gemmell books. I mean, people are just like constantly sharing them here, like left and right. Um, yeah, it's really interesting. But yeah, I bought I think another 4 recently, so I have to go back and take a look. But yeah, if I saw his name after I talked with Sean and Mark and some people, I was like, yeah, I've never heard one author's name mentioned more in the indie community than David Gemmell. So I literally just I snatched like whatever I could. So I had the other ones already. I knew on the shelf, but yeah, I grabbed another 4 recently. I can see the one in my head. I can't believe I can't remember what the title was.
What's the cover? What does it look like?
Oh, it kind of looks like the guy from Legend. I want to say the Ghost King, but that's R.A. Salvatore. It's
Ghost King's Legend Gemmell as well.
Okay, yeah. So it was that one. So I grabbed that one. And I forget what the other ones I thought were his ones with like the guy with he's kind of like a western. It was like a western urban fantasy.
Jon Snow, yeah.
Yeah. So I grabbed, how many are there? I think I grabbed 2.
It's about 2 or 3.
Yeah, 2 or 3 of those.
Maybe more than that, actually. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There's
I didn't know that.
Bloodstone. There's Wolf and Shadow.
Yeah, I grabbed Wolf and Shadow. That one looked really good.
Yeah, there's a few of them, yeah.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, Sean was like, well, you got to read that one. So it's like, okay, that's fair. So yeah, I grabbed a few of those. But yeah, I'm actually, so I'll send it to you when I get it done. I'm actually, this is for the audience. I'm actually, I'm actually spending the fall reading David Gemmell, and it's going to be part of my blog series.
Fantastic, mate.
Yeah,
cool.
So that's why I've been saving them. So I was like, well, I need enough time to read and blog. And use it as part of like a writing exercise. But yeah, so I'll definitely send them to you when I get them up. It's going to be like the first takes and things like that, and then I'll do them. I'm going to do like beginning, beforehand, and then like halfway through end, and then kind of go from there. And then I'll do an end experience once I get through like each like series of books and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it'll be cool. All right, Keith. Well,
looking forward to that. Thanks for having me on, Dan.
I've had a great time. I know it's a little late.
Too,
So yeah, I always love when I can get somebody on and we can chit chat this much, particularly about David Gemmell. So I'm really excited about him. But I'm really excited for your book, though. That sounds like a really cool story idea. I'm always trying to think of things like that, and try to pick up books like that. And I was talking with another author the other day where I said sometimes it's hard to to find those kind of books, that you want to read like that, because I think sometimes, you just think, it's hard to find those. And I think that's why podcasts are important in particular, because people can come on and hear that that's the type of book that you're trying to write. And, maybe some people in the zombie, genre or post-apocalyptic, those kind of things are, like you said, like we talked about, like maybe they're a little bit tired of the tropes or want something, maybe not tired of tropes, but maybe want something new or a fresh take, or idea. Yeah, I know I do exactly. Fantasy and sci-fi, urban fantasy quite a bit. So
you're right when you say you just get a bit burnt out, hey?
Yeah.
Writing and reading in the same genre for so long.
Yeah. I'm definitely suffering through burnout right now for reading, and it has nothing to do with the amazing authors that I've read. I just
Oh,
got done with
not at all. No.
I just got done with H.M. Long's Hall of Smoke, and Hannah just does an amazing job of painting this world. And I did not do her book justice, like, at all. Um, as a reader, but it did for me, and it got me so hyped to read more fantasy like that. But then I started to be like, okay, well, what else is like this? And that really got me into thinking, like, how am I, as an author, portraying my books, and am I advertising them correctly? Am I talking about them in a way that gets people interested? Because I don't know who else has books like hers. It sounds like your fantasy series is very similar, so I'm really excited to go there. So
Oh, thanks, man.
it's a good start.
I hope you enjoy it when you get to
Oh
it.
yeah. I have her review, and I got some other ones. No, like, nobody asked me. I'm just doing them just for free advertising and stuff for people. But yeah, so as soon as I get anything, I'm hoping it'll be a lot different after I finish this rough draft. This last scene up, it's just been like eating at me. I know I'll definitely need a little bit of a break, but yeah, I'll start to pick up a little bit more in the fall, particularly after David Gemmell, I'm sure. And
Cool, man. I'll look forward to it, eh?
yeah, it's awesome. All right, Keith. Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Any other time you want to come, by and chat. I love talking to you Aussies, because my wife's been going to bed early, and she's tired of me talking about writing with her. And
Yeah, no worries, man. I really enjoyed it. Hey, it was good.
Yeah.
And
yes, anytime, you want to come back, you just let me know. And it's so easy for, like I said, for you to, me to get you, CM Quinn, Mark Timoney, Miles Hurt, anybody, because you guys, just a different schedule, on the weekends than other people. So anytime you want to chit chat, or you're like, oh, I got this really cool idea. I do have some panels coming up in the winter before the baby comes. So November, December. So I will be sending out a list, and you just tell me if you're interested in one of them, and we'll get you on here. And yeah, it'll be really cool. So
sounds good, mate.
All right, cool. Well,
Keith,
and yeah.
And I hope everything goes smoothly with the baby. And
oh yeah, I hope you're still, getting your time in, and enjoying it. So
yeah, I'm loving it. It's so good.
I'm jealous. I'm ready to get to that spot. So very jealous.
I won't lie, it is challenging, and it is exhausting at times, but it's just wholesome. It's pretty cool.
Oh, that's really awesome. I hope you guys, get that time, and get as much as possible. So that's awesome.
Cool, man. Well, thanks again, mate. I really appreciate it. Eh?
Not a problem, Keith. Anytime. Well, you guys have a good rest of your Sunday, and I will talk to you later on social media, my friend.
Happy birthday for tomorrow.
Oh, thank you so much, Keith. I really appreciate
it. Happy birthday for like half an hour.
Yeah. That's fair. Thank you so much, Keith. I really appreciate it.
All right, mate. Have a good weekend, hey?
You too. Bye.
Okay. See you, mate.